Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, June 20th, 2023 Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board meeting. We have a quorum of the Planning Board, and thank you, everybody, for finding this gallery. It's good to see you here. I have been asked to remind everybody that at 7 o'clock, the use of the library elevator ceases because upstairs is not open. It's not posted. Should you attempt to leave the building using the elevator, you will set off alarms. And so we'll just keep reminding people, actually start reminding yourself that if you need to leave, certainly if you use the restrooms here, but leaving, if you can exit through these doors out into the parking lot, then we'll be fine. So thank you for attention to that. I believe you all received the posted meeting agenda. I will note that we have added to this a timeline extension at the request of Grassmere, which was submitted to us after the agenda was posted. So that will be a very brief addition to the agenda at the end of the meeting. You all had a chance to review Jim's meeting notes. Any comments, questions?
I move we accept them.
Motion accepted, second please.
Second.
Thank you, Sean, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the motion carries. You've all had a chance, I hope, to review the draft minutes of the June 5th meeting.
Yes.
Any corrections, additions?
I move we accept them.
Thank you, Edna, second please.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the motion carries. I would, at this point, like to just briefly have a conversation about the correspondence that Craig and I circulated to you about the draft response to the memo we received from HAPAC. So I would open it up now for comments, questions. What would you have us do with this at this point?
Well, I think it's a terrific memo, and you guys did a great job. I did offer a few comments, and lately sent an email proposing how they might be included. So I guess that's up for discussion.
Okay.
And I had read your comments, and there was one thing that you had said about the Herculean task of fulfilling their portfolio, which I understand and accept that it does seem to be an overwhelming amount of information that has to be processed for each individual filing, but I believe that it's fundamental to the organization of HAPAC that if they're focused less on analyzing individual applications, they will better spend that time on an ongoing basis doing the research and the development and the identification of resources within the community. So when it comes time to make a recommendation or to share findings about a particular property, they already have a bank of information that they can call upon. So I think that's one of the directions that we need to go in with HAPAC, is that they not be duplicating the efforts that we all make as far as analyzing individual applications. Their portfolio is more geared toward understanding what our resources are, where they're located, and what makes them significant.
Right.
So that they can better assist us in making the analysis that we need.
Absolutely, I think that's correct. What I had added or proposed adding was a few comments about the process. And Melody had suggested that perhaps those comments might be in a cover memo.
Okay.
And I then suggested that they could actually be a footnote. I don't really care. You know, I do think that the comments add value to the memo. So I'd like them included in some manner. How it happens, you know, I'm happy with.
Yeah, my only concern and the tone that I tried to strike in drafting the memo was to keep it as broad as I could. I didn't want to get into planning a meeting and laying out the details of how the meeting would be run and who would moderate it, because I really wanted there to be a group of people post this meeting that sat down from APAC and from the planning board to work that through as a team. I didn't want us
So
to...
there'd be like a pre-meeting?
I think if we were to leave this meeting and say either Craig continues to work with them or whatever, and you might wish to do that, that we work out the details of how we would conduct ourselves in the meeting and what the goals of the meeting would be, rather than for us to sort of assert the goals. And I want them to take ownership of the process, not just the planning board and coming up with solutions. So that was kind of my resistance to being too specific about, you know, what the meeting would look like and where it would be and who would moderate it. I thought that those were things that maybe were best worked out jointly.
My only concern is that I wouldn't like the first meeting to degenerate into, this is what we have problems with you, blah, blah, blah. That's why I suggested a process that would allow people to talk about everything on their mind, but do it in a way that's positive. So that was my concern.
And efficiency, because we have these time slots before meeting and making sure everything really runs efficiently, however we connect these two, you know?
What if we outline that, but not have it be specific, but be specific to the fact that we will have a moderator, agreed upon both parties, we will have maybe something like that, where it would require some communication beforehand, but only for the planning of the meeting. This way it's not just owned by the planning and zoning side of things, maybe?
Well, the other thing is you'll note that this is also going back to the town. So this response is not just to HAPAC in terms of organizationally how to conduct a meeting, but so would you be comfortable then with the memo as it stands with the additional suggestions as a footnote per Edna's recommendations and thoughts? Does that make sense to you, Edna?
Yeah, I thought the footnote read in a way that was very inclusive. It was like, this is just a suggestion, we really want to hear your ideas.
Okay. What do people think?
I feel positively about that.
I guess I'm really myself trying to figure out what are we trying to accomplish. I mean, we're dealing with advisory groups here. And the function of an advisory group is to give advice. And I think there's a certain desire to move beyond advice to having almost a yes or no ability by these groups. And I think that that's just unacceptable. And so I don't really know what we're striving for here, or really I'd like to know more specifically what they really think they're going to get out of this, because that's not how the system works. The planning board doesn't just deal with environmental issues, with historical issues, with cultural issues, with everything. The planning must take it all into account when it makes its decisions. And I think that is lost on possibly APAC, which I think does a wonderful job and has in the past. I don't think they recognize how effective they have been at helping us to more fully understand projects before us. The CAC and the CAB in the past, I mean, Burger Hill came through the CAC. Our whole project of recycling, Phyllis Conklin, that was the CAC got that going out that way. The CAC has a very good history of getting things done as an advisory group, convincing those that are in power this needs to be done. And I think they need to recognize that. They are advisory groups, and their advice, when given well, and it has been in the past, will be taken seriously and very often will be acted on. But they're advisory groups. They are not substitutes for the planning board. We do not have, yes or no approval over the projects that come before us. Legally, I don't think it's even possible under state regulation, kind of wrong. But their advice and their ability to guide us is invaluable. And we need that. But they also need to understand the limitations of what their role is.
My sense is that we could have a very open and fair discussion of that in a well-moderated meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your pleasure here? I will need a motion of some kind to authorize us to respond, and we can do it any way you want. We can add either a cover letter to this, or we can add it a footnote. Do you want me to work with Edna to resolve this? How do you?
I'd be perfectly comfortable myself with that. Yeah, I think Edna has some very, very good points, and I think that they should be conveyed to her.
So could I have a motion to forward the this June 20th response to HAPAC with the addition of Edna's comments.
So moved.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Thank you, everyone. That will bring us to the new application portion of this evening's meeting. The first up is Jacob Briggs, 19 Duchess Terrace, site plan amendment, change in the siding, roofing, and windows. Good evening, Mr. Briggs.
Hi, everybody.
We don't have a microphone, but I would encourage you this evening to come up so that we can capture your remarks on
Oh, okay.
video and address your comments to us.
How are you?
How are you this evening?
Just here, we're going to change the siding from up and down to sideways. We're going to move the windows, and we're not going to do the metal roof because of insurance. The insurance wouldn't do the metal roof, so we want to just do the regular roof, asphalt.
Okay. Now, am I correct that you, because these are the only changes, you have been able to begin work? Is that correct?
We began work today.
Okay.
We have a foundation permit.
You have a foundation permit?
Yes.
And you would be able to go back and get other building permits even in advance?
Subsequent to your
of this?
approval, yes.
Is that true, or could you get other building permits in advance of our final approval of these changes?
We can't.
Michael, is that true?
I honestly don't know. I mean, if you had a framing plan, something like that, let's say, something along those lines, prior to final siding and things of that sort, it's never been brought up before. It has to do with partition things off the way, to my knowledge. I'm not sure if we've ever done that.
My whole thing is that we just, our house burnt in January 18th of '22, so we've been without a home, and it's been a long road,
I'm sure.
and we want to get moving. So like I said, today we started to dig for the foundation. We got approval for that. We would just like to, once we get that done, we would like to move on and get the house built and try to get in it before December, you know?
Can you, I guess, better explain which windows changed? Because I believe there was one that we had to make smaller to be, so it was a...
They were supposed to be, well, go ahead.
Well, the two windows upstairs, they had been reduced to non-egress windows. Now we're going to make them egress windows again. So basically the width stays the same, the height grows by 4 inches
Okay.
on two of the upstairs windows, which you don't see on this elevation. You know.
And the siding was supposed to be vertical.
Wasn't there something with the septic of why that?
There was, they've given us acceptance of what's there. So we can't exceed the number of bedrooms that were in the existing house. There were 4 in the existing house, there's only 3 now.
Okay.
So that's what we're going with.
That's what we talked to Lee from the Board of Health, and that's what he came up with. He said we could do that.
And that's the reason you reduced it, I believe, originally was because...
Right, but they were only gonna let me have the rooms upstairs if we put the non-egress windows in, but that was stupid to me anyway, because if you're upstairs and the fire starts, you can't get out the windows. It doesn't make sense anyway, you know?
Do we have a copy of that? To say that...
Yes.
Yeah, we can do that. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's a letter of,
Yeah.
And the other thing is just the siding. It's gonna go across this way instead of up and down. The insurance company is funny because they won't let you have anything that you didn't have before.
did
Okay.
the material of the siding now is,
The same materials,
Same material, it's hardy board, I think.
just horizontal instead of vertical.
and the color?
She's leaning towards a green color. I don't know exactly what green, but my wife, we really haven't decided on a color, but
We would normally really want to know that as part of the approval. I think we've brought it up before, and we...
I know I could tell you the color, but I don't remember what she told me, but it was like a light green, not a real light, like fluorescent green, but a mallard green, something, yeah.
Let's go with the color of this
Yeah,
shirt,
yeah.
whatever this is.
Yes.
We'll enter this into evidence.
You'll have to give that to the guy when he mixes the paint.
Or
Right.
Delisa's
Right.
shirt, you know, with the
Right,
side.
yes, Lisa's shirt's
Yeah.
nice too. Yeah. Anybody that's got green on it.
Part of the trim, a contrast color?
Construction green.
I don't believe so, no. I think it's all-
So everything is green, including the front door and the garage?
Well, the front door might be a different color. Not really sure about that.
And the windows themselves are white.
Thank you.
So you say it's horizontal siding, is it horizontal clapboard siding?
Yes, yes it is.
And is it the formed units where it's, multiple courses in a single plank, or is it individual?
No, they're
planks of
they're individual pieces.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is the garage being constructed simultaneously with the
No,
house?
I'm gonna do the garage in the spring. I'm gonna come back in front of you and do that because in the beginning, when you guys, with the septic, I wanted a 2-car garage originally. But we're gonna do that in the spring. We just wanna get a house because we're running out of time in the rental and we need to get a house and we need to move in. So we would like to move along, and I've been in front of you guys enough, and...
Oh, no.
Yes, yes.
The only thing I'm confused about is why there were non-egress windows and now there are not. I mean, do we have floor plans or anything to look at that show how many bedrooms there are going to be?
Yeah, there are floor plans here.
Yeah, you got them.
Yeah.
What was the original filing for, the number of bedrooms?
3.
When you came to us before?
3.
Well, we were trying to get 3. The health department then said only 1.
Because you couldn't use the upstairs room for a bedroom.
Right, and now they said you can have 3 bedrooms, so.
Because of using the existing septic, which I went and had an engineer do and all that, and they would only let me have 1. And then I went to the Board of Health and saw Lee, who was the head engineer there, and he said to me, Jake, just use the existing septic that was there. You had 4 bedrooms in the old house. You can't, you can't go more than 4, so you can go with 3. And that's the way he left it, and he sent you guys a letter on that.
And you presently have a tank that's how big?
1,200 gallons.
Okay. And you have a leach field?
We really don't have a...
A dry well.
It's a dry well.
Okay.
Yeah, what is it, the gray water?
Yeah.
Other planning board comments?
Since this is quite minor changes, just as a whole, does that require us to do another site visit, that process?
I don't know that it requires us to do others. The dilemma here is normally, because it's Rhinecliff, you wouldn't be making exterior changes to a building without a public hearing. That's, I think, the dilemma that we're facing this evening. Mr. Briggs, obviously, has already been through the public hearing process with the prior application.
Right.
And I think if I misspeak, stop me, is not looking to have to go through the expense of pre-notification and another step in the public hearing. So it is, I believe, within our discretion as to how, is that correct? It is within our discretion, as to how you wish to proceed this evening. You don't yet have, no, it's green, but you could argue that it isn't a complete application because we don't have all of the information we need.
Did we have information about the color previously?
I don't know. I don't have that approval.
Can you make conditional approvals with the color choice being a secondary approval, just so the color
We
comes in?
can do that.
Right. That's what I
I
said.
am fine with it not going back to public hearing. That's my personal feeling.
Well, and one of the things that we've done in the past is had samples dropped off at Town Hall that we can then just...
I can do that.
Why don't we consider a conditional approval that requires you to submit a sample of the hardy board that you're going to be using in the color that you're going to be using so that we have information about that
That's
on
fine.
file.
That's
So
fine.
we won't be able to sign this until you produce that information. Does that make sense to everybody?
It makes sense. I think before there was some question with the design and siding the room, because Hollywood, if we approved before, so Ron Griffin is perfectly acceptable.
Well,
So I think if it's perfectly.
That's what I
okay.
said, though. I understand where you're coming from, but there's a house being done in Rhinecliff right now that's putting vinyl siding on, so
We understand.
I don't understand why, you guys were against vinyl siding, but there is,
There are different circumstances that apply with every
Okay.
application, and
All right.
and the one you're referring to is not identical to yours.
right.
So that's
No,
why
it's
you
not,
might
but
see a different result.
I just thought vinyl siding was vinyl siding. We're in the historic district. I didn't think you could use it.
Sorry, are you unhappy with the direction we're going in?
No, not at all. Not at all.
let's just continue in that vein then. Anything else?
Sounds good.
I'm satisfied.
Could I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, yeah, let me check the board on this probably. Let me pull the board. Delise? Aye. Michael?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Edna?
Aye.
Fred?
Aye.
I vote aye. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. The next application before us this evening, application Ruby's
Good luck.
3718 Route 9G and Middle Road, site plan amendment and a building for storage.
That's okay. Sorry, you gotta do shadow puppets here.
Start slow, Mark, just start.
Good evening, I'm Mark Rubinsky. I'm here representing Rudy's 9G Properties. And we are here representing Rudy's 9G Properties for a slight amendment, a minor amendment to actually two previously approved site plans. There was an original site plan, then we made a minor amendment, and that was reapproved, and then we're here this evening requesting another minor change to previously approved site plan. I'll just go quickly overview. This property is located on the northerly side of New York State Route 9G. Here's Route 9G, here's Middle Road. This property was formerly stamped property, and then Ruby's has purchased it to move their automotive repairs business for all their dealerships to this site. Access will be via this is the current driveway that accesses the property. It will be approved along with improvements along New York State Route 9G per New York State DOT requirements, which we are very close to having a New York State DOT permit finalized for the improvements. So not only the entrance, but there will also be a left turn lane into the property. As you go into the property, this was the site of the previously approved repair structure for the site, and through here it's actually in the same location as the stamp building that was previously located on the property. And the purpose of this application is to request a minor change for the addition of a small structure, independent structure, for the storage of used motor oil. And so that motor oil is due to, as part of the process of the repair service, which Ruby's does. That oil is actually going to be utilized for heating the structure for the winter. And so here is an architectural drawing that's been prepared that shows this is the main structure right here, and this is the new oil storage building that will be located. Jim, if you could just go back to the site plan for a second. Thank you. And there's a second sheet to the site plan. Right here. So here's the main structure, and then this is the location of the oil storage building. There'll be three 1,000-gallon tanks that will be located within this structure, and then there'll be a connection between this building and also the main service building to allow the transport of the used motor oil between the two buildings. And once again, it's to be utilized for heating for this entire building during the winter. So it'll be stored in here and then utilized to reheat the structure. The reason for the request to have this secondary building is just looking at the the programming through this through the main service area. And in order to, accommodate the amount of storage, it seemed this is a more cost-effective means in order to provide for that storage. As shown, as Jim just shown on the previous architectural plans, this building is in much lower profile than the existing building. It'll sit behind it. So north is straight up, so it's on the back of the building. If you could go to that, please, Jim, right here. And you can see that it's smaller and lower than the existing structure, so it will not be visible from any point along. Actually, the only part that's visible is in the rear of the building, so no visibility from the road at all. Construction similar to the existing service facility, steel construction, and with access to it for servicing the tanks. And then once again, if you could just switch back to the blow up of the site plan, Jim. It now sits here, and so the only other site change that occurred is this is actually the dumpster area. It was located over here. It was just relocated here, and there were no losses. There was no loss of original parking spaces that were associated with it. Seth Stickles here with me this evening. He'll briefly describe the process for the oil storage and regulations that govern the storage of that.
Petroleum, Seth Stickle, Mark Rinsky. Petroleum bulk storage falls under the designation of 6 NYCRR parts 612 through 614. There's a code reference to the specific type of use in the ZZ section. Recently, and actually I think it was 2015, the New York State DEC amended and repealed and replaced those regulations. So what was parts 612 through 14 is now 613. Roogies will be required to comply with that section of the code, as well as an additional section for used oil management, which is subpart 374-2. Roogies will, this is a standard practice for any automotive facility. Their existing facilities have petroleum bulk storage numbers, so we will just be applying for and obtaining a new petroleum bulk storage number for this facility. The tanks that are going to be used are actually in use right now currently in the Subaru facility. They are dike tanks with 110% of the capacity of the actual vessel in a dike, so that if there was any case of a leak, it would all remain in one contained unit. We are proposing a manhole on either end of the building, an inspection port. There will be a PVC pipe, and then the double wall oil petroleum lines will run between the two buildings. Used motor oil is taken into a hopper underneath the lifts, transferred to a tank interior to the building. Once that tank is full, it is pumped into the oil storage tanks. We have 3 in there because they have a capacity for quite a bit of used motor oil, and they'd like to use it to heat the facility. So when in the winter months, we will be drawing off of those tanks, and they will go into a boiler and be fed into a special used motor oil boiler. That's really the bulk of.
Jim?
I think Mark and Seth covered it all. We really don't see any planning issues with the application. I don't see any visibility issues from 9G or really anywhere else, unless you're on the property. And since that, they'll be working with DEC for any compliance regulations for bulk storage, which is really beyond what we talked about anyway. So I don't really see any issues with the proposal from my perspective.
Questions from planning board members?
What happens to motor oil when it's not used to heat a building?
So you'd actually have to transport it off the site. So you hire a company, something like EnviroClean, and they come and for a pretty good fee, take your motor oil away to somebody who either refines it or uses it in different ways. Since we're keeping this on site, we're obviously not transporting it, we're just storing it. And this will be inspected and permitted by those DC regulations. So if for instance, they meet their capacity and they fill up all of the tanks, they would have to call EnviroClean to come clean out one of the tanks so they could then put in more. And that may well happen.
You said the boiler is specifically designed to burn waste motor oil.
Correct.
Is there any complication if the oil becomes cross-contaminated with like transmission fluid, brake fluid, other contaminants that might not get consumed as readily? And does that raise any kind of a air pollution issue or anything like that?
They would be separate waste streams, and they are kept in separate waste streams in Ruby's. They use a hopper that really goes right up just for motor oil.
Okay.
And that is separate and kept separate from any kind of other flushed fluids.
And this permit that you have to get for that tank covers some sort of an inspection?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And leak detection and any other requirements like that. And there's a bit of a monitoring process that you have to go through to comply with the permit.
And these are just single wall steel tanks in a dike assembly?
Correct.
Not like a rock tank that has
No.
galvanized?
No.
Sorry. I dork out on oil tanks.
What, do you want to continue or?
I've
Anyone else
learned
want
too
to talk
much.
out on tanks?
Not really.
Too much already about
Good.
above ground storage tanks.
Too much information.
Anyone else from the planning board, anything? All right, then I think we have a draft procedural resolution we can move ahead with.
So draft procedural resolution for the board's consideration tonight on the application by Rugies for a site plan amendment for constructing an oil storage new structure at 3718 Route 9G within the ORP, accepting the application supporting documents as adequate for further review by the planning board, classifying the actions type 2 under seeker for which coordinated environmental quality review is precluded, scheduling a public hearing on the application for July
17th.
Thank you, 17th. We will send this on to the CAB for review and comment, send on to the HIPAC, Dutchess County Department of Planning, and we need to delegate 2 planning board members for a site visit.
Who would like to go?
I'll go.
Sean and Michael? All right, may I have a motion to accept the draft procedural resolution? Moved by Michael, second.
Second.
Second, Craig, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening. The last new application for consideration this evening is Wireless Edge Verizon 3866 Route 9G, site plan and special use permit for a cell tower. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. Robert Gaudioso with the law firm of Snyder & Snyder on behalf of the applicants, Wireless Edge and Verizon Wireless. I'm joined by the president of Wireless Edge, Mr. John Arthur, who's with me this evening. This, if you'd like me to give a brief
Yes,
background on
please.
this, it's been a little while. We had originally filed this application back in November as a pre-application meeting. We did have that pre-application meeting with staff. We also filed a full application at the end of January. This is for a wireless telecommunications facility off Route 9G. It is intended for a monopole at 150 feet in height, designed to resemble a tree, which is one of the requirements of your code. It includes a ground compound surrounded by an 8-foot fence, also required by your code, as well as a proposed 12-foot wide gravel access drive with underground utilities. As part of the application, we submitted the documents required by your code. That included the site plan, a portion of which you have up here. We submitted all the necessary forms. We submitted certifications from the property owner and both of the applicants regarding the various requirements of your code. The escrow agreement form, the certificate of insurance, the deed for the property, the long EAF, the agricultural data statement. We submitted a structural certification that the facility would be designed in accordance with the relevant structural requirements. We submitted a noise certification certifying we'd be in compliance with the code. We submitted a radio frequency exposure report confirming that we'd be in compliance with the federal regulations. We also submitted an FAA analysis confirming that there would be no lighting required on the tower itself. We submitted a concurrence from the New York State SHPO, and as part of that concurrence, our application to SHPO included a Phase 1 archaeological report. We submitted a report from John Arthur regarding alternative sites and how we came about finding this site, as well as a site selection report from Verizon Wireless as well, looking at confirming that there were no existing structures, confirming the surrounding sites and the alternatives. We submitted a radio frequency justification report from Verizon Wireless's RF expert, showing why there was a need for this facility in the area. And then originally we filed viewshed maps, and based on those viewshed maps, we conducted a crane test. We notified the board and the various entities. We worked with your consultant regarding the methodology. What we did is we put a crane out at the site, where we raised it up to the applicable height. We had a red balloon, and we took photographs from approximately 38 different locations surrounding the area. From that, we finalized the viewshed map, and we prepared visual rendering showing in each instance where the facility was visible or partially visible from, with computer modeling showing what the facility would actually look like. That we submitted last month, I should say, in the middle of May. Also during that process back in March, we had reconfigured the access drive to be able to eliminate tree removal along the access drive. So as part of this application, we do need a state curb cut work permit down along Route 9G. The building inspector did determine that we need special permit and site plan approval from the planning board. So with that, we've submitted the documentation that we believe supports the facility. Again, most importantly, the justification reports, including the fact that the code is very stringent. The code requires a 10-acre lot size. The proposed lot, or the existing lot, I should say, is 37 acres in size, and trying to find a lot in the appropriate zone that's 10 acres or more is very limited. Also, the code requires a 250-foot setback from all property lines, which we meet, and a 500-foot setback from the closest residence, which we considerably meet. So we do not need any of those types of bulk requirements, variances, because we do meet those setbacks and the lot size requirement. I know that your council has been working with various consultants, and we'll look forward to seeing their reports. At this time, though, we would like to proceed to the public hearing process, so that way we can garner the public comment and be able to respond accordingly. I'd be happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair, you or may have this evening.
Okay. Let's preface this by saying these are my preliminary comments. But as you mentioned, the town has brought in George James, visualization specialist, and Ron Grape, an RF specialist, to assist the planning board. I'm going to defer most of my comments on visualization and things to what we get from George, but related to the zoning code specifically, which is where I look for comments and how things do or don't meet the code. I do believe the tower height and the proposed location or setting is an issue, and I think we did discuss this when you guys were before us before. The code item BBB1B notes that scenic, historic, environmental, natural, and man-made resources are to be protected with special attention to the Hudson River National Historic Landmark District and the Estates District Scenic Area of Statewide Significance. This property is within both those districts. Item BBB 8A states the tower should not be more than 10 feet above the average height of the existing tree canopy or buildings within 300 feet of the proposed facility, and this proposed tower appears to be well above the tree canopy, and thus I don't believe we'll meet those requirements. In order to meet those, I believe a variance may be required, but that's something we'll have to talk about.
Can we talk about that now, because I think that's a really important point.
Can we let Jim finish his comment?
Okay, I'm sure, I just don't want to lose track of that particular one.
Okay, we'll remember.
The code does require camouflage to help hide the tower. And I will pull up what's in this. If you remember from before, there are branches proposed on this tower. I think the tree line generally ends somewhere around in here. So these branches, I believe, are well above the existing tree line that's out there. I haven't gone out there and measured the trees, but I'm guessing the trees might be 50 to 60 feet in height. And this tower is 150 feet total, I believe.
Correct.
At the top. So I do believe this extends well above the tree canopy. Section B, triple B also states communication towers shall be designed to eliminate to the greatest extent possible visibility from resident, public road, pathway, or public areas by means of concealment, camouflage, and other things. Again, I don't think that necessarily we're going there with putting extra branches on there. I think it actually makes it a bigger element in the sky, but I am going to defer most of those comments to George James, who's the professional in visualization. Towers are also not supposed to be located in open areas visible from public roads, recreational areas, or residential development. This one is kind of within the trees in a bit, but it is in an open area on the top of the knoll, kind of up along 9G. You want to comment or something to finish mine?
Finish your
Some notes here.
comments and then we'll go back.
There is a lot of information to digest with this proposal. I've been here 4+ years now. I don't think we've seen a cell tower in the 4+ years I've been here. I do think it may be worthwhile to look into having you guys maybe put together a PowerPoint presentation, kind of hitting on the highlights for the public hearing versus going through every piece that's in here in multiple PDFs, and that's something I guess we can discuss. I'm not looking to make more work for anyone, but there's just so much to digest. It may be worth looking into doing that. It's something a little different than we typically do, but we'll talk about that because there is just so much information here. Just want to note, it is in Ag District 20, and given that designation, as well as the other criteria, we do believe that this would be a type 1 action under seeker. The property is listed as historic. I believe the planning board may want to request a phase 1A and 1B archaeological report. Was that submitted?
I think you mentioned
Did you
that.
submit that?
So we did submit it to SHPO, they submitted a concurrence letter of no effect.
Okay.
We'd be happy to submit the archaeological report that we prepared.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we-
Process.
normally we like those reports to
Not
be
a problem.
requested by us and not go directly to SHPO.
We have a federal obligation under the Section 106 process, so that's why we had to go to
Yeah.
SHPO, but we're happy to submit it to this board as well.
Please do.
And then my other comments again, George Janes and Mr. Grafe will be involved. They'll get involved in a lot of the details here. But I did want to note that, as was just noted, the town board did somewhat recently rezone the ORP zoning district for communication facility or tower. We cannot force anyone to go into the ORP, but we did alert you to that previously. I guess you guys did take a look at that as part of your assessment of where you want to locate. So just wanted to note to the board that we did mention that because that was kind of the, I guess I need to say, it's fair to say it's a preferred area for a tower to go along 9G. And at this point, that's kind of my comments. I think a lot will come back from our other consultants regarding a lot of the details.
Thank you, I'm sorry for interrupting before. So as far as the consultants, we look forward to their reports. What we would ask for, because we did receive an additional escrow fund request, and we'd ask for copies of those agreements with those consultants. We estimate the cost, and we understand what the scope of work is, and so forth and so on. As far as the height, we did receive a building department determination that did not call out the need for height variance. There is a code provision that specifically says it shall be the, notwithstanding the foregoing, it shall be the minimum height necessary. We did submit as part of our application a justification of the need for the height. This is a federally licensed wireless facility, so the Telecommunications Act of 1996 does apply, and there are various limitations associated with that. With that said, if the building inspector were to issue a determination requiring a height variance, that's certainly within his purview, and we would proceed accordingly. But what I would ask, because we do have that determination back from nearly 6 months ago, that if that were the case, if we could somehow figure out a way to get with the building inspector and confirm his determination sooner than later, that would be, I think, very important. As far as the various, location requirements, the facility cannot be invisible. That's just a matter of fact. And the code does specifically call out the type of camouflaging that we're proposing. What we did with the visual renderings is we showed the branches down below the tree line. We're happy to discuss an appropriate height for those branches to go down. I appreciate the comment that more branches may be more visible, less branches may be less visible. We're open to suggestions, but what we did on the visual analysis is did show a significant number of branches. What we always do is we certainly cover the area where the antennas would be located. And what we've shown is Verizon Wireless, but pursuant to your code, co-location to avoid the proliferation of towers, and we showed additional space both on the pole and at the base that we would, develop the site to accommodate. But we're open to that type of discussion. We did place it in an area that's against the woods. We're only proposing to take out 3 small trees. We did propose it in a place close to the wetland/lake, but not requiring any type of wetland permit. Again, trying to balance that. We did place it a significant distance back from the street, and we have that listed on our setback map. And just to give you an idea, because it is 37 acres, it did give us that opportunity. So for example, the front setback is required to be 250, we're at 270. The side yard is at 611, and the rear yard, even though it's an adjoining municipality, that's where some of the non-owner closest residences are. We're approximately 725 feet setback. So again, we're trying to balance, I believe, many provisions of the code. I don't think that any application could be invisible or could meet every single provision of the code, but that's what we tried to balance. I would just be curious about what section of secret you believe that it makes it a type 1.
If you look at the secret determinations, when you are in or substantially adjacent to, I believe the terminology is historic district or historic property or something like that,
Okay.
then it would be considered to be a type 1. If you met, I think, 25% of any threshold within the type 1 criteria.
I don't think we meet any of the 25% threshold, so I guess we're at that point.
But we can look into that.
Okay, so I'm certainly happy to take it offline, but that would be an important thing just to make sure that we have it right. As I mentioned before, we'll certainly submit what we submitted to SHPO as far as the archaeological report. And regarding the ORP district, we did look at that, that's in our report. It's a much lower elevation and it's in the wrong spot essentially. As you go down Route 9G, it drops off in elevation and it brings the site closer to our existing coverages and away from where the needed coverage is. But that's in our report and we'd be happy to receive the comments from your consultant and take a look at that.
Members of the planning board?
I have a question. Is this property, I'm trying to remember where the LWP, the local waterfront revitalization area, is that within,
It's on the other side
it's on the other side? 79G.
Still between 9 and 199?
Yeah,
Like Mike's tree service area?
I thought 9 was the...
Yeah. Like,
Mike's is on 9.
yeah, it's right across the street.
For some reason I thought Route 9 was the... And everything west of Route 9, excepting the village, of course.
It's, it's up in here, Michael, around this pond here. So the line runs along 9G and then actually dips in a bit. Bridge.
So we're not in the LWRP, right? Is that-
I don't believe so, no.
Edna?
I went through the renderings, which show the tower from various perspectives, and where you can see it, where it pretends to look like a sequoia. Excuse me. I think it looks quite bizarre and certainly not appropriate for our community. A question I have, and maybe Jim, you can help to answer this, is what the definition of camouflage is. For example, I have seen towers that look like this, where the equipment is covered by something, so it has a very clean look on a monopole. And, you know, to me, this is camouflage that is certainly more appropriate than a sequoia.
So if I can just respond to that. So it's not proposed to be a sequoia, eastern white pine actually.
I've never
And there is
seen
actually a
one that tall.
definition. They do get quite tall actually, all over 100 feet.
We're just preliminary
Sure.
at this point, so what I'm trying to do right now is get some comments for you from the planning board members so that we're identifying for you things that we'll be wanting you to address. I don't think we need to get into a back and forth, because we'll also be getting information from both George Janes and Ron Graves, so.
There is a definition in the code.
I'm sure, okay. Anyone else?
I just hope that those little trees are not the resemblance of the, I know they're not, but those the plantings that would go behind it?
Those were some landscaping that was just shown for, for scale purposes.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Michael's earlier question was about, was it about a designated area within the LWRP? That was,
The question I had, it was within the LWRP, which is a federal program, anyone is required to meet the requirements of our LWRP, the 47 principles, that we have in there. And it's a federal program, so Amtrak has to meet it, CSX has to meet it, the MTA has to meet it, Central Hudson has to meet it, and so does Verizon.
because I wonder about the impact on this scenic area of statewide significance, and also that, I believe this is a scenic road.
I believe it has been designated as that.
Route 9 is
that
designated as
portion.
a scenic road. I don't know if it's on the state or the local. 9G, sorry.
The code, the town does have a scenic road provision that requires a certain setback, and we do meet that setback, and it does allow for the access drive. As far as the SASS, that's triggered when you have a state type permit, but as far as the applicability of those requirements. But we did specifically take photographs and renderings to account for the SASS.
I think we have to realize this is a specific situation where I don't think there's any other project that will ever come before this planning board that's 150 feet tall. So this is a unique situation with unique aesthetic concerns to the community. And I don't think that necessarily the history of what has been brought before this board before and dealt with from an aesthetic standpoint comes close to addressing potential aesthetic issues that may be associated with a 150-foot cell tower.
I think the tower at the grounds is about the same height, if I recall. I believe that was.
The fairgrounds? That's in the village.
That's in the village.
But I believe for some reason, I thought that went through the town. I could be wrong, I have to double check, it's been a long time.
Well, the scenic roads have setbacks, but do they have height restrictions different from typical plant, like,
Not to my knowledge.
shouldn't they, if it's a scenic road,
It's a
so the very.
it's a visibility discussion,
Yeah.
but a tower is different in a way than a building, right?
Yeah.
And so you can't, I don't think they're quite apples to apples, but it is still something that has to be taken under consideration by the board. And I think it's fair to say, if the trees that are out there, if you drive up 9G are roughly, I don't know if they're even 50 or 60 feet, let's say they're 50 feet, that's a third of the height of what's shown here, just to kind of put it in perspective. I don't think they might be much more than.
Do we, for the public hearing, can we have that on a scale on the picture?
Well, I think, did you see the view shed map, the visual analysis that we did? I think it shows exactly where the trees are. I think they're a bit more than 50 or 60 feet, but we can certainly take a look at what the LiDAR shows in the area and try and provide something like that.
Another thing I think this board does need to consider is one of the challenges is if we reduce height, we're just gonna be adding more towers. And I think like regardless, that's just the nature of the beast, because this is a multi-site tower, so every carrier in the world could go on it.
And that's a really good
So
point.
instead of having one tower, so that's gonna be a balance with taking effect. As we reduce that, it's less likely we're gonna have another company join our tower. down the
Also,
road.
when you visit our town by car from the west, that's what you see when you first enter town. And I think that's an important consideration. Now, whether or not our regulations that control the scenic area or the scenic roads has any bearing on this, I think is something we need to explore. But I think it makes it, in that case, multiple towers in different locations might have less of an impact on that resource.
I think
Every
we take-
carrier is gonna wanna be in the same spot as they are. That's why they picked it.
So I think two good points. I mean, there's not a lot of towers in the area, so carriers, all the co-locating carriers are on the same surrounding sites, for example, the grounds. And in the adjoining municipalities. When you look at some of the things that we submitted, we looked at the lower heights, and it gives you an idea about where you start losing the coverage and where the coverage is really needed on 199 heading up in that direction. And that's where you start to lose it, particularly what we did also, if you look at it carefully, we looked at the zone that we were discussing earlier, and when you go further to the south and you go lower in elevation, that's exactly where you start to lose it. What we did is we put circles in those areas to show you the areas that are right smack in those areas, next to the, closer to the Hudson, in the SASS, things like that. And I agree, it's a balance. And that's something that we'll have to work through with the board and show you why we picked this. And I think a PowerPoint at the hearing would probably be helpful to try and pull some of that stuff together.
Okay, and by that time, we should have reports back from both of our consultants, so we'll have a good deal of additional information to be looking at. So unless there's anything else from the planning board, I think we can.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, were any sites in the town of Rhinebeck considered? Because this is very near the border with the town of Rhinebeck.
Yeah, actually, when you look at the reports, we actually looked at a tower that's up in there, and we're on an adjacent tower to that. And if you look at our reports, we're showing how those surrounding towers plus the tower in Rhinebeck are overloading. So we need site for two reasons. One, coverage, because we have lack of coverage in the area. When you drive this area, you know that. But also capacity, because those surrounding sites are covering too much of an area. They have too much capacity. and they're overloaded when it comes to capacity. But yes, that is in our report, those sites that we looked at all 360 degrees. We found the spot because it works, not necessarily which town it was in.
Jeff, do you want to go through this draft procedural resolution, please?
Yes, but I think I want to just make one comment. I'm pretty confident in the type 1 classification based on some of the discussions we've had, but I think maybe we punt on doing a classification tonight to the first public hearing, which we have done before, for type 1s. It's because you disagree with our, and that way we can come back and say this is exactly why we feel it's a type 1, and that way we are confident in that instead of having to reclassify it at the public hearing.
Okay.
So all I would change is just under number 2, we'll classify the proposed action at the public hearing for under seeker. So that's fine. Can
Yes.
So with that, for the board's consideration tonight, a draft procedure resolution for wireless edge for site plan and special use permit for installation of a new communications facility or tower within the along Route 9G, accepting the application supporting documents is adequate for further review by the planning board. We'll classify as the proposed action under seeker at the public hearing. We have a little bit more information. We will schedule the public hearing for this for July 17th. Right, guys?
Yes.
We will send this to the CAB for review, we'll send it to HAPAC for review because it is a historic property, we will send it to Dutchess County Planning, and we need to schedule at least 2 planning board members for a site visit, unless everyone would like to go, but
It's the pleasure of the board. It's one of those that you would like, well, why don't we schedule 2 people and open it up if others want to attend once the time is scheduled, we'll open it up. Is that all right for everybody? Who would like to be the initial members in attendance?
I'll go.
Denise?
Total alternates.
Who would like to go with Denise?
Sean, I think you should go because I think you actually have a broad understanding of this field and I
I'm
think
happy
it's
to go,
helpful
I just
for-
didn't wanna
All right, so
keep
what
signing
we'll
up for
do
everything
is...
today.
Oh, there's still, it's over.
Yeah.
There's no more,
Exactly.
that's the last
Yeah.
one tonight, so
Planning
you're
board
ready.
just bought beers,
Thank you. So we'll empower Delise and Sean to set a time, and then if you would kindly let the other planning board members know, those of you who wish to attend.
Everyone in the loop.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion to
Do you
accept?
let us know as well?
We will contact you.
Okay, because
to
John's right
schedule.
in town.
Yeah.
We always refer to the applicant to set the time.
Yep.
May I have a motion, please?
So move.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries.
Thank you. I just have one other piece of housekeeping. There is a federal shot clock that's 150
understand.
days, and we'd be happy to mutually extend that for a reasonable period of time. You know, you've scheduled it in July, that's great, we appreciate that. Could we send it out another month to the end of July? Is that reasonable at this point? If we have to extend it again, obviously, that's what we're looking at.
You want to extend the shot clock to the end of July?
Correct.
Or would that be to our meeting following?
Well, my guess is that we probably, because I think that's when we're expecting a lot of the consultant reports and public hearings. So I don't think a resolution would be ready for July. Would you extend?
He's saying to the end of July. I was asking about extending it to the
Extending it,
next
yeah,
meeting
I would say- I
following,
would
which would
say
be the first
extend-
meeting in August.
I think that's fine.
Second.
Let's just come up with a date, so.
What would be the date? Well, I want to be clear that
Yeah, I just-
we have the same understanding of where we're going with the shot clock.
15?
Would you be willing to,
I like 21st.
August 21st?
So extend the shot clock to August 21st.
Would you be willing to do
Yes.
that? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody good?
Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much.
Beyond a certain,
Um,
I think it might be, we have.
We now are entering the public hearing portion of this evening's meeting. The first public hearing scheduled to be before us is Alexander Lloyd Morton Road. I am under the impression that we are still awaiting health department approvals. Is that right, everybody? Is there anyone here from the public wishing to comment on Alexander Lloyd? If there is none, may I have a motion to continue the public hearing until, is that July 17th?
July 5th on that one.
July 5th. So could I have a motion to continue the
So
public hearing?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Next one is Rachel Patak, 108 Salisbury Turnpike, site plan and wetlands permit, parking plans, same situation, awaiting health department information. Is there anyone here from the public wishing to speak to the Rachel Patak application? Hearing none, may I have a motion to continue the public hearing until
17th.
July 17th?
So moved.
Motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. The third public hearing for this evening, Catherine Whitman, 16 Old Post Road, site plan review for proposed single-family dwelling. Good evening, Catherine, how are you?
Good.
Do you have some good news for us this evening?
We got the septic approvals from the Department of Health, so they've been submitted. And that was the main outstanding thing. You want me to go through the variances again?
Jim? Does anyone feel they need to go through this again?
You're before the ZBA tomorrow night.
Right.
So we could this evening issue conditional approval pending
ZBA.
the ZBA's decision tomorrow evening.
I like that.
You like that? Does anybody have any concerns about going in that direction?
That just as long as she's understanding that, the ZBA.
But we have,
I represent the ZBA. It's been discussed at the public hearing. The plan is to approve the resolutions that have been granted the previous year. And so we're just going to pretty much.
Just say it's for us, start all over again.
Yeah, so it's the same exact variances that were requested. They're going to be granted again, and we're drafting a resolution to say that.
for approval tomorrow evening.
Yeah, it will be on tomorrow's agenda.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here from the public wishing to comment on the application of Catherine Whitman? No, I believe we have want to run through. I don't think we need to run through the resolution. Yeah, I just want to. Could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Jen, we've got a draft procedural resolution with a condition attached to it, correct?
An approval resolution with condition up.
Yeah.
Look real quick.
Can we just summarize that?
Just let me find it. I put it in the packet on the So the draft approval resolution for your consideration tonight for Catherine Whitman for site plan and wetland permit for construction of a single-family house and associated improvements at 16 Old Post Road, reaffirming the action is type 2 under seeker, based upon review of the submitted information, including reports provided and letters submitted, finding the proposed work is consistent with the objectives and regulations of Chapter 125. With respect to the application for wetland permit, finding the proposed work and intended use consistent with general standards and granting that permit, conditioned upon site plan approved by the planning board. With respect to the application for site plan, finding the proposed work is taking place on a lot that's been existing for many years. It meets the intent of section 101-10-2, which permits modifications of specific requirements of subdivision required to create a conforming lot. This is a non-conforming lot. The planning board has determined they would not require the applicant to attempt to change the lot through a subdivision application due to the hardship of trying to do so, and thereby is utilizing the authority of 101-10-2 to specifically allow the project to move forward on the existing lot, which does not meet the current lot size requirements. Finding the proposed work intended use is consistent, thus with Chapter 125, and authorizing the planning board chair to stamp and sign the above cited site plan upon the applicant's satisfaction of the 3 conditions listed, as well as being conditioned upon ZBA approval tomorrow night. Well, we'll just say ZBA approval.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Sean, second. Michael, I'll pull the board. Second? Aye. Craig?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Louise? Aye. And I vote aye.
Thank you.
Good luck,
Thanks so
Catherine.
much.
The next public hearing for this evening is Carmine Di Gennaro, 5 Moulton Road, site plan and special use permit for a proposed addition. Good evening.
So because it's a public hearing, do you want formal intro, sort of the same as the last time?
I think at a minimum, we would like you to, Like, unfortunately, did we get new information late today?
I think the light fixture was not included on this plan, so we got this, we thought we had sent this last week to Gretchen, and this was the one thing that was missing on the plan.
That's the only change. And the little bit of landscaping, just showing where the light fixture will go.
Oh, where the light fixture is going to go.
The one that you give us, just a summary?
Yeah, so as we went over in sort of an overview last meeting, we're looking to increase the size, the living space in the house, mostly because my wife and her two stepchildren have moved in over the last year. I'm sorry, her two kids, my stepsons. And the square footage just isn't quite enough to accommodate a family of 5. 16-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old. I'm sure you can imagine what that's like in the existing building.
The existing building is 1,300 square feet.
Yeah, it's pretty small. And yeah, the proposed addition, we initially submitted plans that the planning board gave us recommendations on. We then went back, revised them as much as we could to sort of answer all of those requests. And yeah, I'm not really quite sure what else to preface this with. We have our architect, Luke Anderson, here with us. She can answer any other plan-specific concerns.
All right, let me start with Jim.
So it seems like a lot of the discussions we had at the pre-conference meeting were addressed and considered. I don't have anything new. We did request the landscaping and lighting plans. Those did come in today. So you saw the cut of the lighting up front, which is, it's cut off, dark sky, it appears to be dark sky compliant, so that's what we look for. And then the landscaping, I didn't get a chance to look at these ahead of time. Which sheet is that?
Go to the site plan, so go back on the right there. You can see that we've added, there's existing planter beds all around here, and then we'll just continue those around the new addition.
So you're just building a plan right up in here. I don't really have any additional comments.
Who conducted the site visit?
I went, and
Edna went.
Edna went. You want me to start?
Go ahead, Greg.
Okay. Edna and I went on the site visit, and the house sits up on a hill. There is a lot of pretty dense vegetation which screens it from the roadway. The elevation that's being proposed is kind of a dead elevation. There are just 2 windows on the 2nd floor, I believe, that are spread pretty far apart. And when you look at it as it is now, it's almost like it's begging for an addition to put on there. And if one were to put an addition on this particular house, that would probably be the most advisable place to put it. They have made some, they've taken some measures to distinguish the new addition from the older part of the house, the existing part of the house, which is, the applicant says it's approximately 1910. But from looking at it from some of the flourishes and architectural details, it could be as early as the 1880s. It is not specifically listed as a Rhinecliff landmark or a town of Rhinebeck landmark, but it is included within the historic district. And the roof lines do not align. They're somewhat separated from one another, and also the eaves lines are separated. So it does help to distinguish that as something that's separate and apart. The character defining features on the porch and on the front elevation, which would be the west or maybe the south the west elevation, they intend to keep. Those aren't going to be wiped away or modernized or anything like that. And the existing fenestration is in keeping in kind and character with what's existing, but is not a direct knockoff or a replica. That was the feeling that I have from it, from looking for it. It is a very constrained lot, so there's not a lot of room to move on what would be the north side, because there's a property line that runs pretty close. But it's a little bit deceiving because there's a stone wall there that has been moved in over the years, and the actual property line is set back pretty far from that. I think your plans show a 7-foot or 10-foot separation, yeah. So that would be enough space to get in there with scaffolding or, with a reach forklift, that sort of thing, or platform.
The siding, windows, and roof material of the addition would match that of the original house. The new size of around 2,300 square feet would be similar to other houses in the neighborhood. There is screening from both neighbors on both sides. In one case, it's a woodlot, and in the other, the house itself would screen the addition. From my point of view, the 10-foot distance from the side property line is going to cause some issues with construction. The septic holding tank is in front of the proposed addition, so that has to be avoided. I understand that the contractor says that he can manage. I had two things that I thought were worth discussing. One is that there is a bedroom on the second floor that is proposed to be converted to a walk-in closet. It's around 15, 16 feet by 10 feet. It has a window at the back that could allow it to be used as a fourth bedroom unless the window does not allow egress. So that's one issue. And then if you will go to the illustration that was recently sent. My view is that there is little differentiation between the addition and the original structure. I kind of feel that it looks like a house that could be built today. You know, the original structure, for one thing, the different trim color somehow makes it look very different than this all-white proposed building. I don't know, what do you think? I mean, to me, I didn't see any differentiation. Now, maybe that's not crucial. It's not a designated historic, structure.
You say you prefer variation between the old house part and the addition?
Well, that's my understanding of what we strive for when we have a historical structure and we have an addition. We don't want it to look like it's, was always part of that building. And to me, that's what this looks like.
Are the windows in the addition, are they a little bigger than the ones in the original? They're the
In
same
the
size?
first floor, the same size.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I think I think from a historic standpoint, which I'd love to hear more of, from an aesthetic standpoint, I prefer cohesion. I prefer it to feel like really connected rather than disjointed. But I still think there needs to be a lot of honor to the original character of the house, if that's a thing.
I think the fact that the original house projects from the plane of the addition gives it some distinguishing characteristics that separates it. I get your point, and in some cases, I think it's easier to implement than it would be here. I think given the limitations on the site and where this can go, I think the fact, I can't really read it from here, but are they kind of like fishtail tiles in the gable end? That hasn't been carried through. That's a character-defining feature, obviously, on the original house. There's been no attempt to replicate that anywhere on the addition, which I think does separate out. It's also in the portico over the over the front door. So, you know, that's a very, I think, important characteristic of this house that has not been, there's not been an attempt to reuse it and make it sort of phony up the side.
The gable end on the addition also isn't shingled the way, up at the, you know, above the second floor, the way it is on the original.
Yeah.
It's-
So is the trim thicker on the old part of the house, or is it just from how it looks from
It is, appears to be
Looks
different. That's a
thicker.
detail for you, Keith. Is the trim on
The
this.
corner
The
boards
corner
and all.
boards, yeah.
one?
Oh, and also the surrounding the windows, I think it's narrower.
Yeah, I think the trim on the addition could be narrower to symbolize that it's a newer portion of the building.
What material is it going to be sided in?
Clapboard.
So it's going to be wood clapboard siding.
And the color we're seeing is the color it will be,
And,
essentially?
well, it's hard with these renderings because the screens are not always so accurate, but in terms of color rendition, but a kind of off-white, creamy white is our intention.
There's a house in the village that kind of inspired this. It looks really historic, but it is kind of simple and light.
I think an important consideration within the historic district is that the addition be cohesive with the general vocabulary. And because of where this is located, it's a little bit of a judgment call as to what part of the district it's supposed to cohere with, because there is a lot of variety in Rhinecliff. And this is pretty much right on that border where you could very easily walk into the hamlet from where you are.
Oh, yeah.
The houses between you and the hamlet tend to be a little bit more closely spaced relative to one another, whereas on the other side, it starts to spread out. So you're kind of in a transitional zone.
Yeah, we're technically, I mean, our mailing address is Rhinebeck, and we get mail delivery. We're the last house on the route. So it's kind of, you know, we're in that sort of.
The gray area,
Yeah.
And the one of the characteristics of the hamlet of Rhinecliff is there have been a number of additions. The buildings have learned over time. They've been added to over the ages. And because this is not a specific resource that's designated for a particular type of protection, I think it's a fair treatment of it.
And what do you all think about the potential fourth bedroom?
That one that's
Is
designated
there
as a
some need
closet.
to do something to the window, I guess is my question.
Can we see the placement of it on the floor plan?
It's quite tiny. Do you, is it the one, the walk-in closet? That tiny one. Yeah, I think it's like 7 by 8 or something.
710, no, it's 15, 5 by 9, 7. At least that's what I took.
I don't think it's
18. I'm terrible at measurements, but I don't think so.
I don't think it's a legal bedroom size.
All right, use a bedroom, so I can bedroom size.
There's currently only one closet in the house,
It
too.
is 10, it's roughly 10 by 10. So, yeah, it's like 9 by 10. So it's borderline.
And that's the back of the house or the front of the house?
Your issue is really about the window and egress and whether it constitutes making it a bedroom.
Yeah, or a potential bedroom.
But this is,
Would they have to have a closet in the closet?
Actually, no, it's in the language that we have in our zoning law speaks to the conditions under which the planning board would determine if something is a bedroom or not. You know, mostly it has to do with ventilation, light, and ingress, egress. I don't think a closet or anything like that is any longer part of that.
no, I don't think it is.
But
And this is in the original part of the house, second floor. So it's not something you ideally want to change the window on.
Yeah, or like put in a jacuzzi or something like that that would be,
Right.
prevent people from getting out.
If that became an issue in terms of fire egress, would that be picked up in the building department?
Well, since they're not necessarily doing anything with that part of the house,
Yeah.
I don't know whether it would. It wouldn't be part of the building permit application, I wouldn't think.
Any condition?
I mean, what's that room used for now? Do you know?
It's my, yeah.
It was originally a bed.
It was, well, I've been using it for about 15 years as an office
Yeah.
space, and one of my stepsons is in there now.
Mhm.
The board has to decide if you think it's a bedroom. If it would be, then I think the issue is that county health would have to be looked into because it's an
Yeah.
additional bedroom, and that's how we dictate what is needed for
That's a
septic.
question.
We didn't look at septic because there was no discussion of additional bedroom.
Yeah.
I have a question, just, what would constitute a bedroom if there were a home office space, let's say you did a room?
If you were coming in and you were calling it a home office and we thought it was a bedroom, we would call it a bedroom.
Right, so you're defining, so if it was on the first floor in the front of the house, it was previously the living room, and we decided to call it an office, but you suspected that we might put a bed in there and we call it a bedroom,
Well,
right?
it's also,
Yeah.
you could potentially sell the house, and
Right.
the owner would be like, oh, he's using this as an office, this will be, this is
It's
Kelly's
gonna be a
bedroom.
great bedroom.
So
Yeah.
Craig's example is a very valid one. It's very interesting to always see what happens with situations like this when it later gets listed on Zillow or Trivia, and all of a sudden there are more bedrooms than there were before.
And it is being used currently as a bedroom,
Right.
so
It's currently being used as a bedroom.
suggests it's a bedroom.
If we,
It will be losing a window. When we add the addition, it will lose a window which will harvest air and light and air.
It's not that, it's,
So if they change,
quick question about the layout.
can they change it to a non-egress window? Or do they have to retain the ability to go out and fix the fire?
We did that, as we discussed previously, you're getting into the building code area, which I don't work in, I don't work in.
Yeah, I'll do that.
All I can say is the definition of the bedroom was changed in 2021 by the town board because we've had a lot of issues with spaces being called a den or whatever, and they were seen as easily being utilized as a bedroom. And that was done for the purposes of understanding, how many bedrooms are in a house and, more importantly, densities of dwelling units. That the bedrooms shall be defined as providing sleeping facilities for no more than 2 individuals. So you kind of know how many people are in a house, how many bedrooms are there. But I think it really all just comes back to, if it is considered a bedroom, then they have to go to county health to see if the existing septic works and for an additional bedroom. And if it didn't, then that would be the next discussion point. But it is, in the code it says, excuse me, it's the discretion of the planning board where you determine a den, library, study, loft, or room designated on a building plan submittal has been determined to be habitable. It shall be considered a bedroom for the purposes of that chapter.
Now I have a question.
Depends on you.
The drawing, proposed layout shows closet space. Is it possible to make as a condition of approval that enough closet space be put in that space so that it cannot be used as a bedroom, if you get me?
But that could be reversed and taken out.
There's no way to enforce that.
You can't enforce it. While we're pondering that, are there reports from, I was going to ask if there are reports from the HAPAC or the CAD on this application? Okay, if not,
I was gonna ask, can we just run through what our options are here? So we're just really clear as we're going through this.
I think the options are the planning board determine it's not a bedroom, wouldn't be used as a bedroom, and kind of moves forward as presented to you, or you determine that it is a bedroom, in which case I think we then would have to continue the public hearing and go to county health to see if the septic, essentially I think it's a septic issue. I don't think it's another issue beyond that. It's just, it's an issue of ensuring that the septic
There's
system is
nothing
healthy.
but a holding tank, there is no leach field.
I don't know how that would work. I don't know if anything about, but I don't know how that works.
If it's an existing seepage pit, they're unlikely to allow them to expand it any more than what it already is.
I think the problem we face here is it's being used as a bedroom. We've been somewhat consistent in declaring rooms such as this as bedrooms and proposals before us. Since it's being used as a bedroom, I don't quite see how logically we could say it's not a bedroom.
So hypothetically, if it, just walking through it, if it couldn't be expanded, and the answer was, you can't have a fourth bedroom, but this room exists and it's in the old part of the house, what do we do? What happens next?
May I ask a question?
Have you like that one?
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
If we proposed that we shifted this wall as part of this work to here, so the room became the size, especially based on its width, but it
I was
couldn't be a
thinking
full
myself
bedroom.
that if you were to enlarge essentially the bedroom to the right and really make that a closet, truly a closet, maybe a couple of closet doors, going from the bedroom into that space, going over as far as you can, maybe right to the edge of the window.
Yeah, truthfully, this is an awkward entryway to begin with. I mean, you can just imagine it.
Yeah.
They just tried to cram this closet in here. When you walk in here, I can't tell you how many times I've like bumped my elbow just trying to get through this, so what you're proposing makes sense.
We also debated moving the laundry into that room
Right.
and creating a laundry room there.
Yeah, but the laundry room's reversible. The laundry room can,
Oh, it is?
well, your equipment could come
Yeah,
out
that's
and it
right.
could revert to a bedroom in the future. When you move the wall and you physically change the space and create two, you know, I mean, closets with a couple of doors, make his and her closets, do something to severely reduce the size of that space so that it can't be seen as another bedroom.
And what you're proposing, even as you're saying it, makes a lot of sense to me. Again, because we're gonna have one decent sized bedroom here, and this one, as it is, it's not great. I mean, even for, you know.
That is a
kid.
way I believe we could
Yeah.
find a path
I mean,
through this.
Makes sense.
Possibly also eliminate the existing door into that one which is used now as it's.
Right, if you eliminate the door in that hallway,
And have it.
so that the only way in there is through the bedroom area itself.
Two
So it's
closet
not
doors.
defined as a separate space.
Well, could the door be added on this side?
I'm
'Cause
saying,
we're-
I'm saying, yes,
Oh, I see.
eliminate it
I
from the
thought you meant
hall,
from the other side.
so
No,
that
that's where you
it
put it.
isn't
Yeah.
defined as a separate space.
And that works. Yeah, we're just looking for places to put stuff. We're keeping our winter
Can we,
stuff in
can
the
we
attic.
do this conditionally with submittal of these revised drawings, you think?
Yeah, I think we want to be somewhat specific as to what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe it's that the wall is moved to line up with the door that goes to bedroom 2, ensuring therefore that it's not meeting uniform building code requirements for room size, light, that kind of thing. I think we want something that's a reference point for you when you look at it before you sign it, Melody. But yeah, I don't see why that couldn't be a condition. We usually have, you know, conditions.
I like the
If that's something we have.
wall movement and the
And eliminating the door, the existing door.
Eliminating the door, moving the wall in.
And have the access to the closet through the bedroom.
Although the only question I would have, which is really for them to answer, is
Yeah.
the focus of this closet to be a catch-all room for everything, or is it for
I
the
mean,
bedroom?
what
Is it
my other
like
thought
holiday
is,
things,
could-
everything goes there?
Could this be the entry door for this room's closet? And could we have a
You want a hallway
family
closet.
space?
No, I
Really?
don't, no, because
Even
the,
if it was.
no,
that
no,
big?
no,
Oh,
no,
really?
because you can put the door back in.
No, but he's saying put a
Well,
wall
no, no, no,
separated
it's a
into two
He's
closets.
saying
Well,
put it-
oh,
could
yeah,
do
two
that.
closets.
Right.
Yeah, you
Two
actually-
closets.
Simply because we have no family closet.
No, you
We
actually
store
could do
board
that
games.
because you would no longer have
Yeah, right.
egress to
Right.
get out.
But let's be specific. You
Yeah.
need to tell us what you okay with the way this is
Yeah,
going?
yeah.
You need to tell us specifically which, because we're gonna condition this
Right.
approval.
Is this
And you're
okay
gonna
to do
produce
both?
what you're telling me you're gonna produce.
Is this okay?
We have to decide now.
I mean, there's.
You have two choices. You
Yeah.
can decide right now, or you can postpone the public hearing for another month.
Can I ask a question? What is the defining width for the legal bedroom within the town?
I don't think
There
there
is
is one.
one.
Okay, so there's no minimum width.
No,
And what is the minimum room size for a legal bedroom then? Is it 8 by 10?
I don't know that
I don't
there
think it
is.
exists. It would be
Yeah.
habitable.
Okay.
The main key thing is having sufficient light and a way of emergency egress, which is the window of sufficient size so people can get out easily.
So I'm gonna turn to you. You have, I mean, we have several other,
Right.
I would move the wall.
Yeah.
And then just go to you on the door.
Sandy?
By making that change, it looks like bedroom 2 will have 2 closets. Would you allow them to move,
Well, I
flip
think
that
that you would
closet
have
over?
an entrance on one, and then it would be cut, so there would be a split where right? There's like, so you can still
You know,
access.
I'm thinking, let's continue the public hearing month. You work with your architect and come back with specific details.
I would be okay to move the wall and put the door over by the window wall. I think that was a good suggestion.
Do you want to, Gretchen, can we go 2 weeks on this one?
That's up to you.
Sean is asking if we could turn this around, and can you turn this change around in 2 weeks?
Well, we
We
could.
can turn around tomorrow.
We're out of town.
What's the date in 2 weeks?
July 5th.
We're not here. I'm sorry.
All right,
Well, is
We're
your
happy to-
representative here?
No, I won't be here.
We're happy to make the decision right now.
Yeah.
And submit it tomorrow.
we're going to have to approve a resolution tonight specifically stating what we're going to do.
Okay.
So what you're suggesting, by taking this wall and moving it over in line with where the current bedroom door is where the closet, the 2 closet exterior wall would sit, and then we would close this in,
Right.
keep this door here, and add a door here.
And I think that would be,
I think that, as we're,
You'll be able to have a bed in there.
this,
Oh, I see. And they stand off storage too.
I think that would suffice.
Anything?
My only comment again is that it looks like bedroom 2 would end up with 2 closets.
This
I wonder if
closet-
you would allow them to flip it over to the other bedroom or something. to that.
That would be
I mean, it would be great to have a closet here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, this closet is terribly built. It was constructed
So
in the
you can, and
70s.
what he's suggesting is you
Yeah.
can enter that closet from the bedroom on the front.
We could, but I mean, just as a handyman, the way that this was constructed was pretty terrible.
You might
just-
take it out.
Yeah, we could take it out.
Take it out.
It'd be better to take it out.
Build the closet in the other,
Right.
in the other room.
So you're removing that closet and converting, moving the wall in toward the window. We're gonna trust you on a number of feet, and then it's gonna be divided into 2 separate closets, one accessed from the hall and one accessed from the bedroom.
Correct.
Good.
Are we good?
So move.
Are you full already? So that you can check this?
I'll have to, no, I think it sounds like a very reasonable solution. And if we are comfortable that we are all the other things in what would be an approval resolution, could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
All those in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? Jim is going to be drafting the approval resolution. If you can trust us, I will told the board on what we've just determined. Is everybody ready for that? Okay, Edna?
Actually, we need a motion.
Could I, well,
To approve the
motion,
resolution.
make the motion.
I make the motion.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor, Edna?
Aye.
Craig?
Aye.
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 Aye. Go down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move to
Warming up here. Next up, the last public hearing of this evening is Darren and Dana Page, 22 Putnam Street.
Melody, I'm thinking just a brief break.
Okay. Just remember, no elevators, no elevators. Huh?
Sean beat her to it. You and the other one.
There's 2. Good evening.
Do you want me, Madam Chairwoman, do you want me to provide you with the public hearing notices now?
You can just hand that to them.
Do you want me to wait for her to come back?
I think you can begin.
Okay.
We're down.
So I'm Kelly Leibold with KARC Planning Consultants representing the applicant tonight. So they're here for special permit and site plan approval for modifications to an existing residence. This is 1.29 acres. It's located in the RC overlay district. This is a heavily wooded site up on the top of the end of Hutton. And we had provided you with full drawings and elevations at the last meeting. We also provided you with a full sheet showing all the colors and materials for the project. And then we did have a site visit, at which time there were some very good instructions and information on historical renovation. And based on that, we had made the following changes and resubmitted to your board with the following list. So we removed the chimney, no German schmear, so we keep the original brick. We are proposing the metal roof over the porch. I think there was much discussion back and forth as far as this porch and whether it was pergola. In our narrative that we provided to you, it said that we were keeping the pergola, but there was an error. We are going to go with the metal roof, so it'll extend all the way over. So that'll be consistent with the roof on the main building, which will also be metal. The shutters will be replaced in kind. We noted that the window on the south side would be replaced as the same window on the east side. And all of the porch spindles would also be replaced in kind. The work is predominantly exterior improvements. At the last meeting, in case anyone was, no problem. In case anyone was here and was concerned, we had talked about some stone patio that we would be proposing, and so we've removed the stone patio. We're just going to utilize the existing walkways that are there now. So there's field stone walkways, and we'll continue to use those same walkways. So that's.
And once you remove the patio work, the archaeology was no longer required, or had you done 1A?
We did believe that it was still required, yes. So we also provided you, we're going to do some little landscaping beds where the Bilko door is, and the Bilko door will be removed. And so we had provided you with a landscaping plan showing plants that are typical in this area.
Jim?
I don't believe I have any comments. I think everything's been addressed from the last time we had a discussion, based on the site visit.
Okay. Those who were on the site visit, Elise, you were there, Craig, you were there, and I believe we also have a report from CAB that we'll talk to. So you want to report? Okay.
Well, just from like an overall perspective about the structure, a lot of incredible beauty and original elements that are still really intact that I think we all really appreciated. There's also certain areas, particularly to the addition area that's not original to the house, that is very much in extreme disrepair. It looks like there's some structural things happening and clearly needed some addressing. I think now also there's a lot that's being preserved of how it is, but the big changes that are going to affect the original structure were related to adding doors towards the back and shortening one of the windows that would be where the kitchen is, as well as creating access to the basement by moving the existing stairs. With all that said, while it's not our favorite thing to have these changes to an old building, it seemed like it was the best solution in what they were trying to accomplish, while still trying to really consider the integrity of the home. That meant like reusing the original sills, even if they shortened the window, and various details with the brick. The site is definitely very heavily wooded. There was a lot of consideration for keeping the trees and the placement of things as a result of that. And Craig said, which I thought was really smart, just like board and batten is not consistent with the age of this home, but if you like it, it's okay in this scenario, which I thought was really helpful in trying to understand that balance. So, that was my report. Yeah, Craig?
Okay, yeah, and I was late to the site visit, which is why I didn't want to go first, because I missed some of the important details. Thank you for filling all that in. But It's quite a wonderful building. It is one of the designated buildings in the town of Rhinebeck, and it is part of the National Register District, and there's a sheet in the National Register listing that details this particular building. There's a photograph in there from the late 70s, early 80s, and the details that are mentioned are the segmental arch windows, the kind of exuberant brickwork, and also the treatment of the veranda with the pierced brackets and the turned porch columns and the very simple balustrade that runs around. Those are all details that were mentioned, and I believe these are all details that are going to be retained by the owner. There are some challenges related to the vegetation that was growing up on the side of the building, which the owner does like, and that's just one of those things with buildings that get ivy growing on them. It kind of does add to the character and flavor of the building, but it can also be deleterious to the fabric underneath. But there are methods for treating that by putting in some sort of an armature, give the plants something to hold on to that's not the brickwork. And also some program of maintenance so that you can be sure that you're not hiding potential leaks in the brickwork and faulty cracks in the masonry, that sort of thing. That could be masked by that kind of construction. There are a couple of changes that are proposed which would not really be in keeping with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties under, this would probably be classified as a rehabilitation. Changing the dimension of the windows to accommodate the kitchen cabinets. It's really not the best thing, but it does happen on the side of the house that faces the backyard. There's also another window that's going to be replaced with glass block. And I think it would be ideal if there were another solution that would still admit the light and give you the privacy that didn't require taking out that particular window. And also, one of the things that is mentioned in the designation is that it does have 1/1 pane windows. And I think that it gives a couple of dates. I think the owner had said that there's a cornerstone that gives a date of about 1910. 1903. And the National Register nomination gives that date and a little bit earlier date, about 1890. So it's possible that there were a couple of phases to the construction of this initially. It currently has an asphalt roof that's architectural asphalt tiles, and that's going to be replaced by a standing seam metal roof. Correct. Again, roofs are, they have a lifespan. It probably did not have originally asphalt tile roofs, something that's pretty widely used, but also standing seam metal roofs are something that's present in the district and not out of order necessarily. So,
I was also present on the site visit, and one of the conversations that took place was about the German smear, which most of us in the field felt would be significantly diminishing the character-defining feature of the original brick as part of this building. And in conversation with the owners and with you, you have removed that from the application and will be retaining the brick surfaces, which I think is an enormous concession to retaining an important feature of this building, so we appreciate that. Of course, we would all in the historic preservation field like to see nothing changed, but I think most of us felt that the changes that were being made to the rear of the house were offset by the retention of the more significant character-defining features on the front facade. So on balance, I think that is why we came down where we did as on our site visit. George, do you want to present for the CAB?
I have to thank Craig for covering pretty much every point that I made in my report. I'm delighted to hear you don't want to paint the house white any longer. That obviously was, as the planning board's concern, my biggest objection. Yeah, very good. If I could make one, if I could beg, I don't want to, pick a battle about the shutters. It's great you're going to have them on there. Obviously, I'd love to see the original ones restored, but if you're going to remove them, if you could please donate them to an architectural salvage place like Zaborski's Emporium or Hoffman's Barn in Red Hook, they could possibly have another life and be saved from a landfill. And that would be great.
Okay.
I guess as I said, everything else was covered. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the planning board? Anyone from the public wishing to comment on this application? Hearing none, could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second, Edna, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, the motion carries. Jim, if you want to review the approval resolution?
For the board's consideration tonight, a draft approval resolution for Darren and Dana Page for site plan special use permit to undertake changes to the exterior and interior of the historic home at 22 Hutton Street within the RL5 and the RCO, reaffirming the actions type 2 under seeker, for which the environmental quality review is concluded. Based upon the submitted information, finding the proposed work to undertake the changes is consistent with the objectives and regulations of Chapter 125. With respect to the application for special use permit approval, sorry, there's a typo in there.
Is this what they say about the variances?
What's that?
This last sentence, there were no variances.
Right, I just found out,
Okay.
I have a, just run through that. Essentially, with respect to the application for special use permit approval, finding the proposed work and intended use consistent with the general standards for special use permits set forth in the town code, and granting the special use permit conditioned upon site plan approval by the planning board. With respect to the application for site plan approval, finding the proposed work and intended use to be consistent with the town code chapter 125, and approving the application inclusive of the materials submitted with the most recent revision date of June 9th, authorizing the planning board chair to stamp and sign the above cited site plan upon the applicant's satisfaction of those three conditions, with a couple of minor typo mistakes that we'll fix.
Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, second.
Second.
Thank you, Craig. I'll hold the board, Joyce.
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Edna?
Aye.
Craig?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
I appreciate the education too.
The last, not quite the last order of business, because we do have whatever it is. Grass here. So before the extension discussion at the end of the meeting, the agenda here. The last thing before us this evening under old business is Alderkill Carl Dunkenberg, 15 Ballenbecker Road, sketch plan and major subdivision. We have some things to go over this evening, but let me start off by saying the public hearing on this application was closed. So the conversation that's going to take place this evening is going to be between consultants to the board and the planning board, and there will be no public comment. So, Jim, you want to kick this off? And we have with us this evening Andy Land from CPL. We have referred some questions to him. We're going to ask him to be reporting to us, and then we'll proceed through a discussion. Most of you have received information directly from our legal consultants that you've had a chance, I hope, to read, and I hope that will inform your discussion this evening. So, Jim?
Sure. So, as everyone knows, we've been reviewing this proposal for quite some time now. And at a previous meeting, the planning board, as Melody said, closed the public hearing and also approved the seeker resolution for this project. So those two items have been completed. Outstanding issues that remained over the last 2 months were really being discussed between the applicant's attorney and the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board attorney, and included a number of items, including some issues related to, I guess you call it the differentiation between the zoning code and the building code, and how some of that may or may not play out. And I don't know how exactly we want to get into that, but in general, what we have found is there's some differences between the zoning code and I can refer to Kim, and the state building code. And what the planning board reviews is the zoning code. Planning board does not review building code. It's not in the planning board's purview. That said, we do know it is an issue that's been brought up and discussed several times, and so we have looked into that quite a bit. Kim is here to help with the discussion, and Andy's here as well to discuss that. One of the big issues that has been out there is related to the driveway and the driveway access. And that's really where this kind of zoning code versus building code discussion comes in. I don't know, Andy, if you have a presentation you want to discuss or run through some of your findings, and we can kind of take it from there.
Andy, I might ask you, because we're filming, if you wouldn't mind addressing us and the ever-loving camera at the same time.
Absolutely. So I'm going to paraphrase from a memo that I have for the board that I can provide for the record tomorrow. But basically what we did was, at the board's request, we reviewed the state fire code, and specifically Appendix D that relates to access, fire access. And I'll start by saying, in general, the common driveway complies with the town code requirements for common driveway access, with the exception of some comments that remain to be addressed from our March 20th review memo. To start, a fire apparatus access road is generally defined as, and I'm paraphrasing, any access way from the fire station to the front of a building. So every road, every driveway must comply with it, according to state fire code. Common driveway portion of the subdivision is approximately 1,260 feet in length. The town code limits this length to 1,200 feet. So it's slightly longer from Buttonwood Drive to the end of the cul-de-sac than is required. The maximum allowable slope of the fire access apparatus access road is 10%. The common driveway portion of the driveway does comply with that requirement. Where it gets a little tricky is with the fire code section D103.4 about dead ends. A dead end road of this length is required to be 26 feet in length, 26 feet in width, which is significantly more than what's required for the zoning code. It also requires the cul-de-sac at the end to be 96 feet in diameter, and what is provided currently is only 78 feet in diameter. So the primary impact of a change in width of this, it should be noted, is that it's going to increase the limit of disturbance for the project. Currently they're at 4.3 acres. If it goes above 5 acres, they're going to have to reconfigure or redesign their stormwater management for the project, which would require permanent stormwater management practices at that point under the state speeds permit. Finally, the freshwater wetland permit that they obtained from the DEC requires that the driveway be made of a permeable material. State fire code requires that the driving surface be capable of supporting a loaded fire apparatus weighing up to 75,000 pounds. So we would need proof that whatever access road they're providing, or whatever they're providing as a service, can support that weight. Finally, I would just note that we have confirmed that the fire chief does have the ability to waive or reduce these requirements. The primary goal there is that he needs to be able to get his equipment in there, and if he feels that a reduced amount is acceptable, he can do that.
Questions from planning board members of Andy? Questions, clarifications you'd like?
And I just want to add on to Andy's So as Andy mentioned, the width of the driveway is in compliance with the town code, which is what the planning board really is responsible for looking at. For a conservation subdivision, the width is a minimum of 8 and a maximum of 16.
Andy, you had said that as depicted, the cul-de-sac is 78 feet in diameter?
Yes.
Okay, because I had scaled it and I thought it was right at 90. Is that, are there other cul-de-sacs in the area that are less than that? For instance, I live in the village and right behind me is Lorraine Drive, and that's a dead end, and during Sinterklaas and they did this during COVID. They bring all the fire trucks out, and the fire chief used to live on that street, and they had no trouble turning around on that, and that's about 78 feet in diameter. So
I admit I haven't done any research to check any other local, cul-de-sac dimensions. Typically, the town has standards for cul-de-sac dimensions that would be complied with, depending on when they were constructed.
And it really may not matter, they could have been waived. The state now has a building code, I don't do building code, but it was international code, then the state adopted it as their own, so it's all changed, I think, 2 years ago and a couple years before that. And, yeah, it was something for precedent, but in reality, we're reviewing this directly now, so it doesn't really.
Right, well, and the code says what it says, but if it's a matter of, there's no way you're gonna turn a fire truck that big around, or if they just go wheeling through it, what drives the standard? Is it, for the convenience of the fire company, or is it something?
I think it depends on the size apparatus that the fire chief needs to respond, right? A full-size ladder truck may not be able to turn around in that, but, maybe a pumper truck or a tanker truck would.
Aren't there other provisions like 60-foot hammerhead?
There are other alternatives,
yes.
There are other alternatives to the cul-de-sac.
And are there intersections of the common driveway that have that characteristic, where you could do a 3-point turn, potentially?
I think there are, yes. Some of them could be construed to meet that requirement, yes.
I will confess, I did look at Appendix D, and I did look at the diagram, and I did look at the drawing, and it seems like I think you can get a truck if you really have to.
You're right, I think you're right.
Kim, would you like to make some preliminary comment? I mean, we've all received a draft procedural resolution that we can go through. We will certainly put it on the screen. We can go through it comprehensively. We can go through it as an overview. Jim, any comments you'd like to make going into this, and then I'll defer to Kim as well.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to mention that, we are talking tonight about a preliminary plat approval, so it does still have to get final plat approval, so any conditions that are in the resolution, whether they're here now or something that we add, are all things that would have to be addressed by the applicant before final plat approval could be provided. So I just want to kind of keep that in mind. We are discussing some issues here. There is a paragraph in what's been drafted in the draft resolution in front of you. Was reposted today. It has been updated substantially since I posted one at the end of last week.
What page are you on?
Right now I'm on number 8. We actually have page numbers on here.
And I believe this was also posted this afternoon.
Yes, this was
on
posted.
the. And there's copies in the back, and we also requested that it be posted on the town's website as early as possible today, and I believe it was.
And it is still draft, and I think the one that's posted on Thursday contains most of these high-level issues. It's just that we've gone into a lot more detail about a lot of those since it was originally posted. But again, it is a preliminary plat, and the discussions that Andy was just providing us related to code and how the code doesn't necessarily conform to what we have in the building, the zoning code doesn't conform necessarily to what's in the building code, is all pretty well laid out, I think, in number 8, item 3. And I don't know, maybe I can just run through that really quickly on this topic, and then we can get into the whole.
Put it on the screen as well. I think it helps if, do most people have a copy of it in front of you? Oh, I think that's right. Well,
I can pull it up if I see it.
Well, would you like to discuss it more so when you're reading through it than kind of do it as piecemeal.
Well, this one I just thought was kind of related directly to the driveway design element, that's all. But essentially, I guess the only thing I want to point out is the application for subdivision approval cannot be denied by this board on the basis of the alleged noncompliance of the common driveway design with the state building code, as that common driveway meets the requirements set forth in the zoning law and subdivision regulations. So essentially what it comes back to, the overarching theme here is, well, there are differences that we've identified. They have been, the applicant has been alerted to that. The planning board's review is based on the zoning code, the subdivision code. The planning board does not get into building code.
Yeah, the planning board is only authorized really as to what's given to that, and that authority really comes from the zoning law, the subdivision laws. So what John and I had done from Grant and Lyons at the last April meeting was that we had reviewed the public comments, we had reviewed the issues that were raised in relation to zoning law, subdivision regulations. CPL had reviewed some of the engineering, and we had reached out to the fire department as well. So the memo that we had provided to you was really just addressing those questions, and that's how we came to the conclusion that it meets the driveway meets the zoning law purposes, and that's really what the planning board has to be reviewing.
And can't go beyond that.
Right.
Okay. What is your pleasure?
Melody, just one more thing. So one of the questions that it was raised was compliance with 280A and compliance with the Martin Act. We did review those as well, and we do agree that those are required, so those have been added as conditions. Those would be one of those substantial changes from the previous resolutions that had been drafted. So there's explanations in the resolutions explaining why, and in the memo it explains it in fuller detail as to how we came to that conclusion as well.
Okay.
Did you want me to discuss a little bit about the preliminary?
Yes.
So
You might, Kim, also, I think I will ask you, since we're recording this.
Yep.
I don't want Andy to feel he's been singled out.
So we make everybody else stand up.
So as Jim says, what is prepared for you is consideration of a preliminary plat approval. And basically what this means is that it's not a final approval, it's just kind of approving the layout and substantial conformity to what's been proposed. I think that, there's been a lot of public hearings, there's been a lot of public comments, and what is being proposed is that you're going to approve what the plan says. There's some conditions that are going to have to be required before final plat approval is considered. Then when the final plat is provided by the applicant and the conditions are all met, the planning board will review the final plat. If it's in substantial conformity to what's approved now with the conditions satisfied, you can waive a public hearing and then go right into approval of the final plat. If there are substantial changes from what is being approved today and the final plat that has been submitted, you will need another public hearing on that.
Would you like to go through this section by section, or are you feeling in a position to make a motion?
Perhaps just for the record, just the discussion of the ODA and the Martin Act, just so that, I think that's something that the planning board has never had to address before or deal before. It just might be good just to have it on the record and on tape, that we actually know what it is and what we're doing.
There's a state law that is called the New York State Town Law 280A, and basically what it says is that no permit for the erection of any building shall be issued unless a street or highway giving access to such proposed structure has been duly placed on an official map or plat, or if there's no official map or plat, unless such street is an existing street, county or town highway, a street shown on a plat approved by the planning board, or a street on a plat duly filed and recorded in the county clerk's office. So basically what's that saying is that because these lots that are going to be created aren't fronting on an existing town road, it can't be approved without having what's called an open development area by either the town board or an area variance by the zoning board of appeals. There's a process where the town board would get an application for an ODA or an open development area, and they would be able to grant it, assuming that it meets, that it's suitable for safety purposes and access. So it's just saying that because it's not, the lots are not existing on the fronting, on an existing town road, you need additional requirements to have that reviewed by either the town board or variance granted by the zoning board of appeals. We've recommended that it's by the town board, we've given, we've applied to the town board for an ODA. It is within the applicant's discretion if they want to do that or seek an area variance from the zoning board of appeals. The Martin Act is kind of similar in the sense that because the utilization of the common driveway is not on an approved road, is not built yet, it's just, it's a way that the state is requiring that when you build out the road, it's going to be sufficient for access purposes and that it's going to be properly maintained. This is not going to be a town road. The town does not, even if it were built to town specifications, they do not have to accept it. And so this is saying that you can either do this by forming an entity to make sure that you're maintaining the road and that you're keeping it clean and that it's up to safety standards. You can either do that through a homeowners association, but you can also, because this is kind of a smaller subdivision, you can also go and you can seek what's called, I believe, no action letter from the Attorney General office. There's an approval process that the applicant can follow for that. And that's, again, that's in the memo, and that's been communicated to the attorney for the applicant that that's going to likely be required.
Thank you.
Are there any other parts of this draft resolution that you would like to have greater clarification on?
Not for me.
That was very well written.
Everyone feel they've had sufficient time to review this draft procedural resolution, and this would be the time to ask any questions if you have them. You have Andy here, you have Kim here. They are prepared to address anything that we have in here at this time. If you have none,
Just one thing, is there any requirement on the planning board? Does the planning board play any role in the open area resolution? That's all town board stuff.
Well, you'll get it as a referral. We did one at the last meeting as a referral from the town board.
so we got one on Mensch?
Right, from the Mensch subdivision at the last
Okay,
meeting.
yeah.
So you'll get it back as a referral from the town board, just asking for comment, but no, otherwise there's no official action.
I'm good.
So with your permission, would we move right to the, now therefore,
Do you want to actually read through the conditions, maybe reading through the conditions?
conditions start where?
Number 6.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Jim to, is this on, where does it
It's
start?
on page 1.
Oh, well.
Yeah, but maybe we just need to summarize. So we're reaffirming the classification as unlisted. For environmental quality review is not required. Based upon the review, findings consistent with the objective stated in Chapter 101 of the Town of Rhinebeck's Town Code. We're referencing herein the secret resolution that was approved on April 17th, 2023 by this board. We are noting that we have followed the conservation subdivision design process over the course of several meetings and went through the 4-step process, formally completing it at the April 17th meeting. Based upon documents from New York State DEC, the board has found the applicant has secured the approval to construct that portion of the driveway within the state wetlands, and that work shall follow that approval and wetland permit. And then number 6, Kim was just referring to pursuant to 101.45F4 of the subdivision regulations, we place the following conditions upon the preliminary plat approval granted by this resolution. All these conditions must be satisfied before the board can approve a final plat and have the planning board chair sign the final plat now. The first one will be the applicant providing a performance guarantee. I'm just going to summarize most of these. One is a copy. The second one is a maintenance bond, general liability insurance, public franchise utilities, compliance with 280A, which is the ODA that Kim just discussed with us, and compliance with the Martin Act that Kim also just discussed, provided detail on. Putting in a driveway design element to discourage trespass. Before the final plat approval, the applicant needs to submit for review a design that discourages vehicles and pedestrians from traversing the portion of the driveway located near Buttonwood from trespassing onto the Benetti property by providing a sign along the common driveway directing traffic. That was something we discussed at a prior meeting. This says the town of wetlands permit, should say the town of Rhinebeck wetlands permit. The planning board will consider the wetlands permit pursuant to chapter 120, and that is discussed later on. Before plat approval can be provided, the applicant needs to submit to the planning board the conservation easement to ensure protection of the conserved area, and that is subject to review by planning board's council prior to granting of approval, and we have seen that paperwork.
And we're reviewing it.
Same goes with maintenance of open space, making sure that the ownership, the maintenance, the open space is owned and maintained by a single lot owner. Again, those are documentations, those documents that will be reviewed by Grant and Lyons. Final sign off from the planning board's consulting engineer. We've asked for a site plan revision to amend the lot lines. Right now, the driveway lot is supposed to be completely within the bounds of and owned by lot number 3, but the way that the subdivision is laid out, there's actually a line between the driveway lot and lot 3, so I think that line needs to be taken out just so that it's all one lot. So that's a minor change to the plan. There's a recreation fee requirement for each of the lots that's created. There's the requirement for payment of fees and reimbursements through the escrow that's been established for this project. Number 7, this is where we talk about the wetlands permit. The planning board finds the proposed work and intended use to be consistent with the general standards for wetlands permit as set forth in chapter 120 of the Town of Rhinebeck Code, and in particular section 120-9, noting that the DEC has also provided their wetlands permit for the work that's going to be done. The planning board will grant to the applicant the requested wetland permit on the condition that they also receive site plan approval, as we typically do on our resolutions. With respect to the major subdivision preliminary plat approval, planning board finds the action is consistent with Town Code Chapter 101 entitled Subdivision of Land, in particular 101.45 entitled Approval of Preliminary Plat for Major Subdivisions, and approves the plat inclusive of the subdivision plan and associated materials prepared by Synergy Design, dated March 6, 2023, with the following notations. The board notes the design and dimensions of the proposed common driveway are permitted within the driveway specifications as set forth in conservation subdivisions of the Town of Rhinebeck zoning law. Common driveway is not required to be constructed as a street to the town standards. The common driveway is located along a parcel which is referred to as Parcel A in the 1986 subdivision known as Schuyler Acres. This was all reviewed by council. We've discussed that previously, and there are some more details in there regarding that. The common driveway is proposed is not intended for dedication to the Town of Rhinebeck, and there's no obligation on the part of the town to accept such common driveway for dedication as a town road. The planning board permits or waives the requirement that the maximum number of single-family homes accessed off a cul-de-sac cannot exceed the maximum number permitted in section 101.62B5 of the town subdivision regulations by permitting the proposed additional 4 lots to access Buttonwood Lane. Based on the review of access points, discussion of public hearings, and input from the public, Buttonwood Lane access has been found to provide safe access to lots, results in a smaller physical footprint than would result from installing a driveway in another location, and has not been found to create a moderate or significant impact on existing Buttonwood Lane properties. Importantly, access from Buttonwood Lane permits the conservation subdivision to preserve a significant undeveloped and uninterrupted land area, something is the key goal of the conservation subdivision provisions in the zoning law. And if the board remembers, we did do this with the access off the cul-de-sac in the past, where we thought a variance was required, but it has been determined that it's actually for the planning board to make that decision as a waiver. Planning board notes, based on the research conducted, that the common driveway may not meet the state building code requirements. We note the jurisdiction of the planning board is to review the subdivision application pursuant to the Town of Rhinebeck zoning law and subdivision regulations. Matters of the New York State building code compliance lie outside the jurisdiction of this board. And as such, the application for subdivision approval cannot be denied by this board on the basis of the alleged noncompliance of the common driveway design with the state building code. The applicant's aware of the public comments that were received by the board during the public hearing sessions in which the alleged noncompliance of the common driveway with the state building code requirements was raised. The board has encouraged the applicant to review the allegations as they may potentially impact the ability to build on the lots as proposed. At this point in time, the applicant has proposed to move forward with the subdivision plat and common driveway design as proposed, and thus this preliminary plat approval is hereby noted as being consistent with the Town of Rhinebeck zoning code, but does not approve, imply approval of, or imply approval of the proposal as it concerns building code requirements. The applicant's been informed it may not be acceptable, what's been proposed may not be acceptable for the purposes of obtaining a building permit from the Town of Rhinebeck for the lots as shown, and could require resubmission to the planning board if the code requirements aren't satisfactorily met when reviewed by the building department for consistency and conformance to those codes. And then, planning board notes the following general requirements for final plat approval. The final plat and surrounding documents and supporting documents, for the proposed subdivision will constitute the complete plans for the subdivision proposal. And all of that will need to be submitted for final review by this board. In review of the final plat, the board may consult with the town staff, fire departments, other boards or committees, the board's planning, engineering, or legal consultants, and any representatives the board deems necessary from other town, county, or state agencies. Reimbursable costs incurred by the planning board for consultation fees shall be charged to the applicant, and payment of outstanding fees is required prior to stamp and signature by the board chair, which is common. And the planning board may waive the public hearing required for the final plat application if the board determines the final plat is in substantial agreement with the approved preliminary plat, including any modifications or requirements imposed by the planning board. We had a comment about the considerations that were made and the input in the public process that was undertaken. Note that in the opinion of, as a board, the proposed subdivision meets both the letter and spirit of the zoning law's conservation subdivision provisions, especially as those are expressed in the 12 paragraphs describing the purpose of the conservation subdivision provisions in zoning law section 125-43B. Now, therefore, be it resolved, since you want to read this now, I can do it for you.
Go ahead.
Based on all the facts described above, in this summarized by me just now, and upon the reasoning described above, Section A, for the reasons set forth in the foregoing resolution, the planning board hereby grants to the applicant preliminary plat approval subject to the conditions set forth above at paragraph 6 and otherwise in the resolution above. Section B, for reasons set forth in the foregoing resolution, the planning board hereby grants to the applicant a town wetlands permit subject to the conditions set forth above in paragraph 7 and otherwise in the resolution above. At Section C, the approvals granted by this resolution are conditioned upon the applicant's full payment to the town of Rhinebeck of any and all fees and escrow deposits due in connection with the application in full compliance with Article 14 of the town of Rhinebeck zoning law entitled Fee Reimbursement. Final plat approval should not be deemed granted until all such fees and reimbursements are paid in full by the applicant.
Any closing comments? Kim, anything
No,
to add?
does the board have any questions or any further discussions?
Before I ask for a motion to approve, is there any final questions, comments? All right, may I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Michael, may I have a
Second.
second? Edna? I will poll the board. I will note that the public hearing was obviously closed, which is why we're not addressing that this evening. Sean Jones.
Aye.
Craig Olszewski.
Aye.
Delise Berry.
Aye.
Edna Lockman.
Aye.
Michael Trimble.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you very much. That brings us to the last order of business on the agenda this evening, which is a timeline extension request which has been submitted by Grassmere.
So, Grassmere House has submitted a request for a timeline extension. At the December 5th, 2022 meeting, the planning board granted a 6-month extension for the site plan approval to June 20th, 2023. At that meeting, special use permit was also extended to June 19th, 2024, and the wetlands permit to August 8th, 2024. The applicant requested the planning board issue a second 6-month extension of site plan approval to December 20th, 2023, as they are reportedly in the final stages of obtaining the required permits from other local and state agencies. With that, we offer the following extension resolution for the board's consideration. In consideration of a written request timely made, the town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby grants an extension for the satisfaction of conditions and requirements set forth in the planning board's approval resolution for Grassmere House dated June 20th, 2022, as follows: by extending the end date of satisfaction for the site plan approval an additional 6 months from June 20th, 2023 to December 20th, 2023.
And move we accept that.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention. The motion carries. Thank you, everyone.